Ok. Bon, pour ceux qui parlent pas l'anglais, ça va être un petit peu plus compliqué parce qu'on va le parler en anglais. Bon, je pense qu'on va parler distinctement. Et puis, s'il y a quelques francophones qui versent dans le français à la fin, on leur en voudra pas. Okay, so welcome everyone. I mean, we're going to talk about data and fashion, but we're going to talk about also topics like a bit of IoT and luxury also. Before starting, what we're going to do is that, could you present quickly in a few words yourself? Start with a woman. Jessica?
So I'm Jessica Graves. I'm at a fashion and data science studio called Sefleuria, and I have a long history kind of in data science and body scanning for fashion.
My name is Natalia, Natalia MODENOVA, and I'm Executive Director of Mercedes-Benz Key Fashion Days and co-founder of Moda showroom in Paris.
I'm Eric Briones, or Dark Planner. I'm strategic planner and I'm create school, business school, and I wrote books about luxury and digital.
Hi everyone, my name is Romain. I'm working at Dataïku and we're selling an advanced analytics software to let companies doing awesome things. I hope I'll tell you more in a moment.
So, before going directly in the discussion, just a few things. I don't know if some of you went downstairs, and there's a great exhibition. And one of the points here is that, you know, clothes, I mean, it's something that you always wear, nearly always, except if you're in a shower or if you're in a naturist camp, but or at home. But usually you wear clothes, and you have a relationship, a pretty intimate relationship with the clothes. It means that you can sense a certain number of things and also show a certain number of things or express yourself. And you'll see downstairs, that's interesting how clothes have been turned into sensors. It sends how you feel. It sends your heart rate, even your brain waves. It also sends things that are from outside, pollution. It sends a noise. You'll see that. Other point also is that you'll see how you're able to use clothes as user interface, which means that by moving, for instance, you will be able to move a certain number of things or react with other objects. It's also a new way to express. You see a lot of clothes and dresses with lights on. And last thing is that you are, I mean, it's also a mean to express like a media, because you can also express things that are all around. For instance, if you're wearing a dress or a trouser and you want to show how much pollution there's around, but there's a lot of people around sensing this same pollution, maybe you could have a trouser in red. I don't know if it would work or not, but it's interesting to see how, in fact, clothes are changing a bit functions. Some will work, some will won't, but that's the first point. Another thing about, and we're going to discuss more about fashion and data here, one of the points here is that, in a way, there's kind of a position between fashion, luxury, you know, where you need to be creative, it's craftsmanship, and the other side, data, which is, you know, we talk about big data, massive of things that are calculated, so there's kind of, first, a contradiction here. And also, there's another point about that, it's that, in a way, it's also reduced the barrier towards, for other people to come into the luxury, to be creative, but also it's more complicated because then there's so many people on the market that it's difficult to just go outside on that and to emerge. Also, well, we can see an opposition, but there's also complementary things, because when you're in luxury or when you're in fashion, you have a one-to-one relationship with your clothes, with your brand. And when you have data, well, you can customize. You have personalized information. So you can customize information or customize your clothes, things like directly to a person. So you have also one-to-one relationship. So it's interesting to see on one way opposition and complementary things. When usually you go to, well, maybe, I don't know, 20 or 30 years ago, you went to a shop, and even now you go to a shop, you look around and you test different clothes and you buy it and then you go home. Then there's a second step that happens is that online, what happens is that you go online, you see also maybe dress or trousers or whatever shirts that you like, you order them, you test, and you see it doesn't work because it's not exactly the right size, so and after you send them back. And what's happening is, I would say, the first step is that we're putting more and more tools, ways for people in their home to have the same experience as in the shop, to measure themselves, for instance, but also with virtual reality or mixed reality. And it's interesting also to question ourselves to where's going to go the shop? What's, in fact, the value added of a shop? Is it going to be like customized items that you will produce in the shops? Or will you also bring new experience? So that's also another point that we're going to discuss in our talk. Last but not least, and we discussed about it a bit earlier on, is that we're so sensing a lot of information through the clothes. And the point is, will it change also the way we create clothes? Will it change also the way, well, it will also bring up a certain number of questions about personal information. So we'll see if there's a lot of topics that we kind of cover during this talks. We'll try to do a maximum to do most of it. And so we'll go through that. Well, I'm going to start first from one question. And the first point was, in fact, between fashion, the opposition between fashion and also luxury, and being creative, for instance, and the fact that we have data, so much data that, in a way, there's a kind of opposition. So I wanted to know what is for you I would say, how do you tackle that? How do you manage to use data in a process that is so creative, in fact? For instance, what do you think about that?
Well, to me, managing data, being a data scientist, doing some machine learning is also very much about being creative. I'd say that's a new way to be creative, but I do like your question very much, because to me the question is more about luxury, fashion is all about being artistic, having inspiration, and how is today data bringing some change about it? Are we slowly killing creativity, or shall we instead say that thanks to big data we'll be becoming more and more creative, smarter and smarter? That's what I tend to think. That's what I hope too, actually. But that's the way I see it so far.
Jessica?
Yeah, I would also say that data science itself and even algorithms get to design how people experience the internet, how they experience the web, what kind of connections they can make with other people. So to some extent, data science and algorithms are the newest creative tool. You can't really decide how someone experiences online if they're not, if you're not building the algorithm. And so I think it's a mistake to kind of keep the data scientists over in IT or outsource and keep them far away from the people who are creating campaigns, who are creating clothing, because they kind of get to decide how that message gets delivered, and they kind of get to decide whether your message gets seen or not at all. For example, you can think of the uproar over when Instagram changed their algorithm. It's not because the algorithm's so objective and it's doing something so standard, it's because they decided and designed what that experience would look like, and that drastically changed how people could connect with each other and find inspiration, find other designers. So I also think that it is part of the creative process, and the closer you can get to those creatives, the better.
What do you think about that, Natalia?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say that I'm representing here like designers part because we work a lot with many designers, and it's like summarize of their experience. And from this point of view, I want to add that first of all, using technology in fashion was treated like, for example, doing some digital presentation or some online show instead of the show just on the catwalk, or some customized product which you can do like online on the website of the designer. But I believe that true future, real future in the other things, and true creativity in using technology is something that will help to change the way of consuming fashion. And that's the big question to all the designers and also to the retailers nowadays, because today is a big question about how retail will survive, and online retail, and also sustainable fashion. It's very important topic, and the one will be really creative who will combine all those things together.
just one quick question. I went to the CES, and what was interesting is to see, and Vivatech also, was interesting to see is that there's some people that on one side have a picture, and the other side they have a painting, and they mix together, and you really think it's a drawing made by Monet or by Picasso, whatever. So I was thinking, what about design? I mean, maybe couldn't we use like AI to create new clothes, and we wouldn't use so much designers? Would it make sense or not?
Yeah, there's an interesting precedent with StitchFix, for example. So they've trained an AI to read images, and it can look at the market and say, okay, yellow ruffles are doing really well, and button shirts are doing really well. Let's make a button shirt with yellow ruffles. And the AI can kind of make an image of it and show it to the designers and propose it as a design. But data can only measure what already existed. It's not going to create a new thing. It might be a combination enough to be different enough, but it can only know what's in the data set, or it's really difficult for it to completely make something new unless you really, really program it that way. So you still need raw material, and you need like hundreds of thousands plus images for it to be able to do anything like that. So that's kind of the constraint.
Yeah, I'm totally agree with Jessica, because of course data helps to know the behavior and the habits, but in fashion it's very important the story which is behind the product, and the story is not just a mix of a few numbers, and the story is not just something that goes into the product. It also goes in the way you communicate about the product, in the way that how you consume the product. So this storytelling is true creativity, because now designer is not someone who creates a new shape of the dress. All the shape of the dresses are already created, because shape of the body of the human is the same, like so many years already. But those are successful during last, I can say like 10 years, because it's like last 2 years. All the big stories happen to the brands who has like story behind, and that's the key. And that's something that I don't know, machine wouldn't do, because we also had there's a conference, and there was a question about singularity, and that machine will also do the design instead of people. And actually, yes, but creative director is the main person in fashion, not even the designer who is like sewing and doing the cut, but creative director who is thinking more and giving the idea, which is then implemented, of course, with the help of the data.
Yeah, it reminds me of one day there was a crowdsourced film where they said, okay, the best film will be in a plane with snakes, with etc., etc. So we made the film. It didn't work out really well. And in fact, it's interesting what you're saying, because it's concerning experience storytelling, and I'll ask Eric also a question about that. It's, as I said before, we're giving more and more tools to people to experience, I would say, have everything at their home to measure themselves. I mean, there's startups, plenty of startups saying, okay, just go in front of your camera and get all your mensurations, and that you don't need to send back the things. And more, and with VR, etc. So experience at home, what is left to the shop? And I'd like to know, what do you think about that? What's going to be, is it experience? What are we going to do there?
Sure, it's experience. Your question, it's like a battle that I see. You saw Alexia style for Amazon, where you are front, you have the camera, and you have got a group of stylists say, yes, it's okay for you, it's not okay for you. At the same time, you have got 24 Sèvres, which is the big e-shop for LVMH. You have not this kind of tool, but you have got a live, but with Parisian stylists. And I think, yes, the dream is very important. Data are always there in luxury. My mother was a couturière for Chanel, and I saw his books that full of data. When you make cognac, you are full of data. Data are always there. Simply, I say data must be a god, not the god. And for me, it's important to give data for creator, but it's like more like a mood board. And you can do whatever you want, but it's a great mood board. And after the connection with the shop, I give you the example of tailoring. when you say of tailoring is data, you know, is to the idea of to bespoke is data. And what is the goal of the shop? Yes, you have to create great experience, it's the most important thing, but when you are luxury, create experience, and I think it's selling experience also. Today, which is very important for the consumer, that my statue symbol, my statue, my social statue, are more about things that I live, experience that I live, that object that I have. And that is very important, that I imagine that tomorrow, Chanel, Hermès, Vuitton, we will sell experience. And it starts with no close 19, with a big e-shop of alcohol from LVMH, and they sell experience also. But if you want to create great experience, it's not a natural thing for luxury. You need definitely data to craft the good experience.
And customized also. Yeah, you want to say something, Natalia?
I also wanted to add, because I totally agree with you as well, and I would like to add that not only even experience, but also the lifestyle. And because digital and technology became a lifestyle now for so many people, of course, it's fashionable. And altogether, it makes this sense and this value to the customer.
Romain.
Yeah, I kind of agree with everyone. That's good news, actually. To me, the only point when I'm thinking about going to a real life shop, if I may say, the only reason why is, of course, the experience. And when you mean experience, to me, you mean customization, individualization. Sorry. And the good news is that, as Eric said, for this kind of stuff, you just need data, right? How can you deliver the best customized experience to your customer? Why, otherwise, would they still walk out, go to your place on Saturday between 10 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the afternoon? That's the only reason I can see.
Yes, and also one more important thing, you probably know that Calais, the main concept store in Paris, but also in the world, has changed the concept. And I believe it's like a big sign for all the fashion industry that it's next revolution in fashion, because I will tell briefly now the concept. Before there was a multi-label space on the second floor where you can buy different brands, and now for 6 months it's so different. Every month it's becoming a mono brand for some brand, but it's not just a mono brand it will be now it's Balenciaga. It's not the same as across the road. It's totally different product inside, and beside this the customer gets not just this exclusive product, they also get this experience of seeing this art installation inside, because it's together artist creates a space and special product produced for the store by the brand, and altogether it makes sense for the customer to go there. But everything is changing so fast, and we will see what will be after 6 months, but it's already such a big sign.
But beware, data can kill the shopping experience. Because you know why we shop? We don't only shop to buy things, but we shop to have surprise. And imagine if everything is personalized, surprise is zero. If everything is personalized, you can kill the dream. You can kill the desire. You have to be aware to have a good mix about that.
I think another example, kind of in the New York version of what you're describing, which I saw, and it's really fascinating, is called Story. It's in Chelsea, and they kind of tear down the shop every month or two and completely rebuild it. They work on products that don't exist at all with big companies. Sometimes it's a paint store, but sometimes it's actually fashion, and that's kind of the new model of the way someone I saw describe it was, you have to create an Instagrammable moment. If you don't create the Instagrammable moment, you're not going to have anybody walking through.
But also I want to add some information from the retailers, because we just finished the showroom here in Paris and met so many buyers from all the department store, concept stores. And what we experienced during last year, I would say, everyone comes and says, okay, I love this collection, but give me exclusive, or make exclusive color for me, or make exclusive something. So every retailer wants to be special, and that's a way for them to survive now. And this example with Colette is a quintessence of what's going on, but because everything is changing so fast, I think the next revolution will be not just in store, but it should be something combined with digital.
Well, I want to bounce on what you said, Eric, because there's different things, like Aram, for instance, did some customized heels, and you see them directly produced in the shop. It's not in the, well, it's in the fashion in a way, but it's Lancôme, for instance, that do a foundation, so fond de teint in French, that is exactly the color of your skin, and well, and you have to pay, I think it's 80 euros instead of 40, so, but at least, I know, from what I understood, it's pretty complicated to find the right foundation. Unfortunately, I don't have much on me, but and the point is, well, customization, is it also another way to drive people in the shop? And even, I would say, like, even if you're a, you know, when you go to a restaurant, it's nice to see the kitchen. Well, you could also see, go to the shop and you can see not everything, but at least the personalized part directly produced in front of it. Do you see that also as a trend, Eric? Or also,
I think the best business for that is beauty business. Because beauty business, you have got personalization so strong. And you have got the crafting part also so strong. It's a good mix. I think for the future, for beauty business and for beauty retail, the personalization is so important, and it asks a big question. Whether you have got Sephora with big Sephora, when you make personalization, you have need not big place but small place. And we talk about experience, okay, but you know we dream. Because today, in the mindset of retailer, it's how many business by mètre carré. And when you think with mindset, we don't think about experience. Experience is not important for them. We have to change this mindset, and it's quite hard.
Yeah, it's true. If you think about it, I mean, on one side, if you customize, usually the margins are much higher. And now there's a small company called Smart Pixels that's in fact enable you to even to, before producing it, you can see how it looks like. And it's true that the space can be not too big into the shop. However, it's a new, it's new expertise. I mean, producing things into a shop, I mean, that's not given to everybody. And having small factories everywhere, I mean.
You're totally right, but you know, the magic word in marketing is community. When you see the transformation, and I can talk because it's not in France, of Apple Store, you know, Anna Arendt with the big chief of retail from Apple, you know, the model was luxury 2-3 years ago. She compared Apple Store like Vuitton store, whatever. Now it changed. She wants that this store is a community store. It's like, you know, Starbucks that you go everywhere. What does it mean? Does it mean that you have to change this experience if you want to be community, you know?
I also think that as far as customization, I think the more likely way to make customization work is to do it in advance and not to do it on the spot and not to give people psychologically the burden of, well, what do I want? How many choices do I have? What's that going to look like? I don't really know. And I think what I've seen over and over, because again, I had a background in body scanning where companies would call and say, what size should my medium be in Korea? And we would look at the data and look at body data and tell them. They saw serious revenue lifts by doing that. And I think there's a very different psychological aspect of, I'm going to create this for myself. It's being one produced. I can't return it. No going back. It's completely different psychologically. So I think there will always be some people who want that, but I really don't, I don't necessarily think that that's going to be what's going to be, you know, give it an edge. If you can, in advance, look at data and make your clothes fit the region you're in and fit the people that are around your store and maybe customize your fits to different stores, that's going to make people come in and say, oh, it just works every time and I don't really know why. But the customization on the spot, I think there's a layer of people who want to do it, but it's not everybody. It's kind of like too much for them.
It's totally that. I give the example. Yes, it's okay. Just an example about that is Saint Laurent makeup. You can send to the brand your playlist, your favorite music, and they create, you know, your makeup who look like your lifestyle. But you know, the idea is that we have customization and bespoke, and it's not the same culture. This is mass market customization. Bespoke is definitely a luxury thing.
Yeah, and it reminds me about paradox of choice. In fact, when you have too many choices, you don't choose anything. There was a test by the soup Campbell when you were in the supermarket, you have plenty of soups, so people didn't buy anything because of it was wondering what soup they're going to buy, and if you just put 4 items, then they're going to choose. So it's a very good point about customization, and maybe either reducing customization or maybe preparing that beforehand. And what about, I mean, you have, well, you have, through online, even offline, so much data. How much on customers, how does it change the way we create? How much does it change in terms of production, in luxury and in fashion?
Well, from a data company standpoint, anyway, the thing that we've seen in like the last 5 or 10 years is that you can now have a wonderful mix of transaction data, which means what did he buy, at what time, what was it, where was it, and so on. You can add it a lot of interaction data. What did he say about it on social networks, on with the SAV, sorry, service après-vente.
After sales.
Thanks. And last but not least, what can you get from external data? Would it be the weather, the level of money that you can find in a specific area? And this gives you like a very complete picture of your customer. I think we'll talk about that later on, but the one-to-one customer knowledge is like the ultimate marketing fantasy. I doubt we will ever reach it, I hope. I don't know, that might be the end of my work, but yeah. But yeah, the point is now you can really deliver almost being so fine that you can find like, you can try to address like the people between 10 and 20 years old that come from this specific area that love raincoat and this kind of stuff. And that changes everything in terms of production. You need to be much quicker. We talked about customization right on store, right before. But yeah, I think well, a very nice example at some point was the Burberry fashion catwalk a few years ago, where you were able to buy the clothes like right after they've been on stage, right? And you could also customize them on your own, which is amazing as far as I can see it.
Yeah, it's true that the one-to-one relationship, well, it's also have an impact in even on distribution because, well, one of the things, if you create a one-to-one relationship between a brand and a customer, well, maybe you don't need any more of a distribution, except if it's exclusive distribution. Well, and even with Internet of Things, I mean, you could have some clothes and say, I mean, do you want some more clothes? You don't need any more in distribution. How do you? What are thoughts about that?
Well, that's something that we see very much. Companies trying to get rid of the retailer because it's like a gap between them and the final customers. For luxury, it's kind of different because they all try to have like a direct relationship with their customers with online or real shops. But the point is today, how can they get more and more info from the retailers, even though they're not willing to share the data, even though they understand they get like a very competitive edge, like they know really what the customers want to have. So the question is more, how can you seize this data? And working on the interaction data, social networks and so on, is a very good way to get a few more.
And I believe that data, of course, is very important and give you a lot of information. And in fashion, it works more for mass market or some affordable product because, of course, not everyone would like to spend, I don't know, 2 days to choose a dress or to customize a dress or even to spend 2 hours. Or there are a lot of like people who are working and they can't afford this. But there are a different way of consuming, and it's luxury, affordable luxury, and it's the same for emerging brands in a higher price category. That it's more important, like data is important, but the big factor is the community. So if the brand has a community around it and has the data about this community, this is more precise. And sometimes big numbers not that valuable than smaller, because now, for example, this digital influencers is a big trend. Before, street style was a big trend, but now, for example, people don't believe anymore to the person who change their look 5 times a day and posting it to Instagram, and there is 2 million people of followers. They believe to the other one with I don't know, 10,000 followers, and the person who explains why this product is better than the other one, and they rather go to such a purchase. So data, of course, is important, but community and storytelling, so all the things which are really not so much digital, creativity, community are those which are keys. Because, for example, technology and data, they're becoming more and more accessible. Before, like even 2 years ago, we didn't know who is following us on Instagram, who those people, when they are going to see. Now it's like free, everyone has access, and it's no more luxury, you know, in a way. But things like creativity and the community, they more and more valuable.
I would also say the kind of asset that data brings is that you can find sub-communities that you didn't know existed on the other side of the world who are really engaging with your product or a specific message you put out. So one way that data is interesting is that it can give you, if you produce a product and someone says, oh, that's not going to sell, we know our customer, and then you're able to, you know, look at, you know, data is also images. Data is everything. It's not just clicks, it's not just buy, it's images. You can now train an AI to read content. So if now you can find everybody kind of disparate corners of the internet who might be interested in that product might come to life and never have happened. So it's not, it might just be the distribution part where you find all of those subcultures who really like your product, and that gives it enough of a life. The second thing that it does, it gives you how much should I produce. So you might design a whole collection, make samples, shoot a lookbook, and instead of going into production, waiting 5 months and then launching and seeing what happens, you get a number of how much should I produce of each one of these things. What was the engagement like on this version versus this color? And that gives you literally a depth of inventory, so then you're not overproducing and then putting on discount and hoping for the best. So I think that's where, you know, data will allow some products to exist that didn't, and also give you the tools to create in small batches, instead of trying to guess and check and only make things that are really appealing to a broad audience.
Yeah, which means it means, in fact, much more diversity, in fact, and because you can really lift up some products because you know that there's some specific people that are interested in that. Other point, I mean, we're talking about a lot of data on people, and of course with more and more sensors that we might have on our textile, as we were saying before, or even a smartwatch or whatever. I mean, there's a question about personal data, and I mean, there's a new regulation that's coming over in Europe in 2018, which is called GDPR, or RGPD in French, which in fact, I mean, you have pretty big fines if forever you don't comply with this regulation. How are you going to tackle that issue? I mean, it's big changes in terms of organization inside.
Yeah, so, well, first thing, it's more an issue for our customers, obviously. But then I'd say one of the key points of the GDPR is being able to provide under very short notice, I think it's less than 48-72 hours, the data that your final customer want to get. Let's say I just would like Hermès to tell me everything that they know about me, how they get it, and what they're doing with it at the moment. And the truth is that I'd say a lot of our customers today, they get a lot of data, but I'm not sure they are able to tell me in real time what they're doing with it, where it comes with it, is it opt-in, and so on and so forth. So that's going to be a huge challenge for a lot of our customers and for any company using data, actually. And the key point to me right there is data organization, or being able to have a global view on your data workflow from raw data to production, and so on and so forth. But the truth is that France is not the most endangered country about that, because we already get some very strict laws. But if you think of the UK or the US, I think it's going to be quite difficult for them.
I think also, I mean, what's interesting about what's happening with algorithms right now is there are algorithms that have come out where they don't care who the user is. They just care that you're on the website. They look at the first few clicks that you've done. They look at, you know, what are you hovering over? And they try to guess what context you're shopping in, for example. So they don't know who you are. They're not going to share anything. They're going to be able to compute it fast enough where it can, in real time, give you an answer. Whereas the reason you want user data, especially before, is because it takes so long for literally a computer to compute what it should now recommend to you. And it used to kind of depend on if you came back the next day, your recommendations would be great, but they couldn't really do it in real time. That's changing. And I think companies that will be strong will be able to kind of utilize those algorithms and utilize all these new methods that are coming out where you don't care, you forget the data immediately, you don't forget the user immediately, you don't know who they are, you don't care if they come back tomorrow. You just set up the website in a way that what their interactions are will tell you what context they're in, and it'll feel personal even though they have no idea who you are.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. It means that, in fact, you're not going to keep all the data, but what's going to happen is that you're going to have information and enough information just on the spot, and then you'll be able to either predict or maybe change your website or whatever, or do recommendation directly based on that. And it's true that it means also it's a bit like privacy by design, or it's really thinking in front of how am I going to comply to this regulation, and maybe information I'm used to get, well, and I don't use it in reality, then, well, now I'm going to clean it up. I won't ask it anymore, because if I do get it, then I got issues. Eric, what do you want?
What is funny that it's a new luxury and an old luxury. Edith Sliman tells that anonymity, to be être anonyme, it's a luxury today. And it's quite funny that you have, a big club in Alibaba for the best people who invest, and they total anonymity. They give that. And I think that we have to understand that sometimes data can lie. Why? They lie because we bullshit. We lie also. Like you say, today we are, I tell that on the book, Homo ars vivendi. We are very obsessed about our lifestyle. And when you see our Instagram, we lie all the day. We have a beautiful life. And when a brand study Instagram, I think they have not really the true vision. And I love the word, it's a new trend, it's of social cooling. Social cooling, I have the definition. If you feel you are being watched, you change your behavior. Big data is supercharging this effect. That it's, I think, a good idea that data can lie. Data is a god, data is not the god.
Yeah, I think it's true that a best way to see it as, well, we have to pay attention, in fact, to also to the data we're using on people, and it's not also all the thing. And it's true that there's, in a way, we know everything about you, but you know that everybody knows about you, so you react based on that. So there's a change of behaviors. You want to say something, I think, Romain?
Yeah, well, I was congratulating Eric first because I like this idea. But yeah, totally agree. We get, well, each day more and more data on everything, everyone. The real question is how true or how relevant does data are? And big data, well, that would be my answer to Eric, is supposed to say that you get such a huge amount of data that at the end it's supposed to tell you the truth. This is what we call the law of big numbers, la loi des grands nombres, which is basically that the more data you get, the more likely you are to find the truth. But still, it's just a rule.
The idea of size is so important, and it's maybe a problem for luxury compared to other sectors like insurance or beauty. I studied with the big data method the branch of shoes, luxury shoes for men. They don't create enough data to be very smart, And I think the idea behind that is creativity. Is it good for data, and data is good for creativity? And I give the example of creativity with data is Netflix, with the king of data, okay? When you see series made by this algorithm, it's very good for fun, but is it good for very new ideas, very new plot? No, because you see series were made by algorithm and other by human, and the perfume is not the same.
Yeah, it's true that when you feed artificial intelligence or data with always the same thing. It creates like kind of a bubble where you always stay there. And in fact, I wanted your opinion, Jessica, because I mean, on one side, when I see about artificial intelligence, it's a good way to transform complex data or massive data into simple decisions, but maybe the decisions are always going in the same way.
Well, so there's a few things there, and I wanted to kind of touch on what we were talking about before as well, is that, for example, if you ask someone their favorite brands, and I see a lot of companies who are starting out, they're getting into tech, they're doing recommenders, they start with this, or I take in the user preferences and I give them what they want. If you ask them their favorite brand, you will never sell them anything because they're not running around, and I'm not gonna wear Comme des Garçons head to toe every day. I'm gonna buy a lot of things that are not, Comme des Garçons or semi accurate. But if you ask me, that's the first thing that's gonna come into mind. I'm gonna put it in, and then maybe you'll never sell me anything. But I think the other part of that is that, again, algorithms are a design choice. Like, some of the reasons, if you look at your Netflix feed now, it's very different from what it was before because they added in revenue as a factor. So now they're like, okay, let's show you the things we think you would like, but also that are the cheapest for us to show you. So that really will change your experience. And so it's not just data being good or bad or being enough or not enough. It's how do you decide what to show and how do you design it? What algorithms did you design to serve up that experience? Because it's all the same data. The other thing that comes up is if you use, for example, collaborative filtering, which is underneath a lot of algorithms, it's just going, if no one's ever interacted with something before, it has no idea who to show it to. And so that means lots of things might get created and then, fall to the bottom because it's just, well, no one's interacted, so we don't know what it is. So one way around that is to, again, look at the content as part of the data. So, for example, Spotify actually analyzing the sound waves and finding other sound waves like that and not just, oh, it was on lots of playlists. Playlists will get you this far, and then adding that makes, Spotify Discover Weekly really, really engaging. So I think part of it is using content, and part of it is really interrogating how you're designing the experience with that algorithm and not just kind of keeping the PhDs in the corner and then deploying and then finding out later that people don't like it. Or I think, data scientists need to start user testing, for example. And this is something where, there's entire conferences just about recommender systems, and in the past year or so, they've realized, okay, we don't know how to measure whether it's good or not. We used to measure how good a recommender was because it was fast, and nobody cares. So we need to now know, like, what are those user experience metrics we can use to figure out if it's a good one or not.
In a way, I would say that, especially with the rise of artificial intelligence, shouldn't we include mistakes or errors or randomness into artificial intelligence so that maybe when, for instance, for a movie for Netflix or for clothes or whatever, instead of always going through the same algorithm, we just push some randomness in that, and then it'll push maybe some surprises and learn from that.
That's also a design choice you can make in your algorithm. And for example, the lead data scientist at Guilt a few years ago did that. If he had a set of recommenders, there'd always be one that was just like, I don't know, we're just going to throw it in there and see what happens. Because that, again, will give you a little bit more context, a little more information than if you click on 2 pairs of black pants, you get all black pants. It might not be really relevant to what you're doing. So that, again, that's another part of the design choice for that algorithm. And algorithm doesn't mean fixed necessarily.
Maybe the error is the place of the main. Maybe the error part is for the main, okay. To put the error.
We'll see. But that's also, the other point is that, I mean, the industry has really been shifting from, towards digital. And one of the questions is, has it completely shifted or on the other one, on the other side, I mean, there's a lot of still to do to digitize, to integrate data, and to change also the organization, the process, and all the work behind.
It really depends on the age of the designer. If you have a millennial designer, it helps. I give the idea of Jonathan Anderson. Jonathan Anderson loves data. Okay, get Demnia from Balenciaga. He loves data. And when you are millennials, you are more data friendly than the good old designers.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like maybe politics. Maybe you need to change also the age of the people. Okay. Do you have some point about that? I mean,
I think it's just the beginning of this fashion meeting technology, fashion meeting data process, because I remember that maybe during 6 years, every time something new happening, but still it's on the way, still it's on the process. For example, with Google Glasses, yes, we remember their first launch and what it is now. It's completely different things, but it's such a few amount of time passed. So I believe it's only the beginning. And also there is, you mentioned many times the clothes with measurements of the like body measurements, and also it's not perfect yet, but it's more like experimental now. On the other hand, in fashion, there is a big trend for activewear, for example. But these two experiments and this trend, they haven't met each other actually yet. So it's only the beginning, and it's still the place for startups who will bring fashion into technology and technology into fashion organically, which is very important. That's still in the future.
Yeah, I'd say that in terms of technology, especially machine learning and data science, everything is moving so fast. I think Jessica was not doing the same kind of stuff 3 years ago, and she will probably,
Definitely not.
So the good news, the bad news is that this talk will be probably very out of fashion in 1 year, but we'll have to meet again, I guess.
So yeah,
Well, yeah, and the other thing I wanted to add there was we're not even halfway to e-commerce being, e-commerce is not even half of the market yet. So we have no idea if it's going to just keep shooting up or if it's just going to stop. And people are like, okay, I can get these things online and I don't really care about the rest. I have to go in person. And one thing to keep in mind is even for companies that are 100% online, like StitchFix, for example, they have thousands of stylists who are employed. So the algorithm makes a decision about what gets put into a box, it gets sent to your house. But the stylist gets the last word. So that system's not totally automated and they're 100% online. So, and I think part of why they did that was not because they couldn't make the algorithms good enough, but because people liked it better if they knew someone picked it out for them. So even if you had a perfect, flawless recommendation and an AI could go in and figure out your style and like send you the right thing, like for the most part, people wanted to know that a person did it. So I think you'll still have that in-store interaction because it'll be like, oh, my sales associate picked this out for me. Therefore, I like it. And it's again, we have to really look at the psychology of why people purchase. And even if it's perfect, it's people still like to connect with other people and have something done especially for them.
well, which is a good thing, and it goes back to Natalia, what you were saying about the story. I mean, you need to have a story behind either a club or brand. I don't know if we're going to move to questions. There's about 5-10 minutes left. So I don't know if some people around here are wanting to ask a question in English or in French, whatever you want. Go ahead. I mean, I don't know if there's a mic or a... Oh, okay.
Thank you, very interesting. Got a particular question for Jessica in particular. I come from the same line of work, and I think what's really interesting in what is happening or what will happen is the impact on e-business as a whole. I mean, we're talking a lot about the interface with consumers, and I think you've covered the subject matter, but you mentioned Spotify, you mentioned the music industry. It's not an accident that the developer of 24/7 comes from the music industry, comes from Apple. I think I'd like to have your views or the panel's views on what you think, say, 3 years down the track, because this is really picking up amplitude. As someone was saying 3 years ago, a different world. What do you think might be some of the impacts on the broader, the e-business of luxury and fashion here or in general?
Yeah, I can add one tiny piece of that, which, I mean, my goal would be to see people treating users in a different way, maybe not using the word users, maybe not using the word consumers. When I talk to people and I say, who are your customers, they answer with age ranges and where they, how much money they're making and where they live. And I would really like to see that shift towards how do they behave? What kind of group are they part of? What are the actions that they take? How can I tell something about their behavior? I think that will start to happen a little more as people realize like buying lots of data and aggregating it doesn't necessarily give you more interesting interactions. So I think that move towards how are these people behaving, and not really the cutoff of they spent a lot of money, and I think that will start to go away, and people start looking at who are my connectors, who's really speaking loud and proud about my brand. Maybe never bought anything ever, but constantly bring me awareness. And for example, I'm advising a company that reverse image searches and will segment an audience by their taste, and that's the same thing you could do at Spotify. It's the same. You could use the same model to make an insurance decision. So I really think we'll just keep having to establish use cases, and it'll really depend on what comes out in the next couple of years.
I don't know if you had, or either if you wanted to answer, or if you had any other questions. You had a question, I think.
Oh, there's someone.
Sorry, I didn't see you. On the back, go ahead. Yeah, don't worry. It's going to come to you.
I actually have two questions, but they are both related. So regarding data and all the digital change that is happening right now, what of the fashion and luxury industries you think it's more applying the data and the digital transformation? And regarding luxury industry, do you think that they're really listening to the data, since luxury houses they did take the trends and they tell the consumer what they want, and it's not a consumer saying to the luxury brand what they want?
Well, that's a very good question, actually. Is it the brand which is dictating its views and its fashion to the customer, or is it the customer that's going back to the brand and fixing its fashions? The truth is I got no answers to this. What we do with our customers and some of our companies, we tend to spend a lot of time online with them, doing some social listening and this kind of stuff. So the way we do it right there is making sure the brand try to stick to what its potential customers expect. But in the meantime, when you think about it, well, I'm not sure I would wear this kind of shoes if Adidas or Nike have not been doing a lot of advertising on it. So that's kind of a double-sided question. I don't know what you feel.
Yeah, speaking about who is the first, the brand or the customer, in terms of luxury, here is, I would say the brand is telling what is fashionable, what is not. Because for the other, for dictating by the customer, there is another category, contemporary. So you can go to another stores and buy what you like because they know that you like it. But luxury you consume, you buy not because you think it's cool. It's because they say it's cool. It's it's a basis. It's like a pyramid. So on the top there is a luxury and there is a bigger story. It's not an average story behind of the mass market, for example. So that's why luxury stays luxury. Of course, there are steps to the wider audience, for example, to this millennial audience, but it's another a type of product, and it's still lead by the brand.
Yeah, and just to complete, I mean, if, for instance, I mean, still, of course, important to listen to the customers, but if you just listen to the customers, then you lose your own values. And just to give you an example, if you make a parallel with musicians, if, for instance, we asked, I don't know, U2, Depeche Mode, for Rolling Stones, or whatever, or early ones now, and you see their career, and if they always listen to their first fans, maybe they would never change, and we would never have surprises. And for the same thing, for brands, it's good to listen to their customers, but also at some point in time, they need to mark its brand, where it's going. And also Chanel, for instance, did it a lot. To say, okay, this is the way I'm going, even if sometimes it's not the way my customers usually go.
I think it's also important to understand how you're defining luxury. Is luxury meaning the big houses that we all think of, or is it kind of this modern luxury that's coming up where they make 1, 2, maybe 3 products, and if they change them, they make lots of color variants, and they completely optimize that product. And what happens is not that they're constantly adding new products based on data, but they do a lot of research in advance to say, how do I, if you think of a way, how do I solve the problem of traveling to the airport? And they'll talk to lots of people and get lots of feedback, and then they'll make the one perfect product, and then they'll kind of go with it. But I think the modern luxury companies tend to have 1, 2, maybe 5, 10 products max, and they'll try to make them really perfect. And they'll do it in advance with data, and then maybe, change colors around and, think about how to build a lifestyle around it.
Yeah, and I'll give you some more data. So also we have like this fresh feedback from all the big buyers, big stores and smaller like Carbonnelle's, Le Bon Marché, like everyone. And what they say, they come to the showrooms, the multi-brand showrooms or to the designers' showrooms, and the worst news they can hear that we changed the designer. So that's bad. So why to change the designer? Because people love the brand, love the designer, and it takes time to build this story, to build this heritage, to build this luxury value. So that's the answer, I think.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And if you are the slave of your data, you become a convenient brand, and it kills your fascination power. And I think luxury understand that because, it's a war today between Amazon and luxury brands. Amazon is the king of convenience. And quite all European luxury brands don't want to be sold by Amazon. And now Amazon fight in Brussels, to kill the right and to have the right to sell Chanel, Hermes, whatever. It's a big question, but at the same time, millennials love luxury. It's okay, change a little bit the definition. The most dangerous, maybe, it will be Gen Z, the other generation. And I think this generation, I don't have the same relation with luxury and the same fascination. Maybe they are not fascinated about luxury. And that can be a big trouble for them.
Maybe they're more fascinated by experience. We'll see that.
Yes, and the beginning. And that can help for the experience.
Well, thanks a lot, really, for this conversation. It was really great. I mean, we covered a lot of topics, so that was great. Thanks also for your questions. And if you have any questions after for any of us, we will be pleased to answer. Thanks a lot.